Welcome back, Linda Heffernan, a Kaizen Mind. This is video 2 on getting to know Jolene, partnering with your imposter mindset. So if you haven't seen the first video, I encourage you to go look at that. I think I call it Jolene, my inner imposter mindset. Okay. I'm Linda Heffernan, behavioral scientist specializing in executive leadership coaching and cognitive behavioral hypnotherapy and therapy for executives. In my last video, we met Jolene, the name I give to my personal inner imposter, and I explained why I don't call this imposter syndrome. So before you watch this, watch the other one because the context will matter. So a syndrome is fixed, a mindset is something you're currently practicing, rehearsing, which means it's something that you can practice differently. And indeed, that's what I work with my clients on when they bring their own imposter to the session. Today, I want to go further than the reframe. I want to show you what it actually looks like in practice to get to know Jolene properly, to partner with her rather than push her away. So this is part self-coaching and part how I might coach it with somebody. Even in therapeutic practice, I turn up with coach approach, and my questioning is very, very similar. So this is informed by my evidence-based training in psychology, CBT, neuroscience, and coaching. So there's no woo-woo here, folks. Quick recap, because this matters for everything that follows. Jolene shows up through your amygdala, your threat detection system. Fast, automatic, no conscious choice involved. And when you try to fight or suppress that reaction, you tend to get more of it, not less. Which reminds me, I have to make my video on Sheldon knock knock. That will mean something to the Big Bang Theory fans. The amygdala doesn't back down because you've told it to be quiet. It escalates, because now it thinks the threat is serious enough that you're panicking about it too. So if silencing doesn't work, Jolene, my inner imposter, Linda, what does? Partnership. I treat Jolene as a colleague, as a friend, as a bodyguard with information, not as an enemy to defeat. And that's not a soft option. It's actually the more disciplined one, because it means that doing the work of finding out what she's responding to rather than just trying to neglect her and drown her out. So last time and in previous videos, I think it's my A game and my cognitive behavioral approach to coaching or therapeutic practice. It's listen, think, listen, thank, connect. So today I want to add the fourth step, because this is where partnership actually becomes practical. So listen. I notice what my Jolene is saying without arguing with her. Yet, there might be a bit of debate. What's the internal language? What's the emotional response? What's happening in my body, the somatic? Thank. Acknowledge the signal rather than resenting it or pushing back. Thank you for Jolene for flagging this. Thank you for showing up for me. So this isn't about agreeing with her conclusion. It's about respecting what my amygdala is trying to protect me with. Okay, it's trying to protect me with the information that it has. It thinks it's true. It's likely not accurate. Then connect. So this is where I engage the prefrontal cortex. What is Jolene actually responding to or reacting to? Which part is real and which part is the story built on top of it? And choose. Once I can see the real kernel clearly, I choose my response, not a reaction that I fell into, the response that I selected. So this maps directly into my A game. If you've watched that video, listen and thank, sit inside, aware and acknowledge. Connect is appraisal, working out the narrative, and choose is action, and then always assessment, coming back afterwards to notice what you learned. I want to bring in a client story because I always think that's far more practical, and it's the way I learn best as well. So I'm going to walk you through this with a client. So a client was real. I'm changing the name and the function and particularities of it to keep it anonymous, but the context, the theme is accurate. So we're going to call them David. David is a senior operations leader, recently given responsible for a merger integration project. So it's the biggest remit of his career. 2 weeks in, Jolene shows up, and she shows up hard, okay? Before a steering committee meeting, his internal language was, I'm going to be exposed as not ready for this. And it's... His body was giving him information too. Again, like Priya, tight chest, shallow breathing. The stomach wasn't great. The same pattern the night before every steering committee. So we go in with listen. In our session, I ask him, what, if I may ask, is Jolene actually saying to you right now, if anything? And he said, I don't have the experience for something this size, that everyone on the committee has a merger run before, and I never have. I don't know how to do this. So I didn't challenge that yet. I just let him say it fully. Okay. And then I moved toward thank. Now he already knew some of my context and my structure. And I asked, what would it look like to thank that thought rather than push it away? And he goes into the context. He said, I suppose it's not wrong to notice that this is a big step and a big step up. That's true. Okay. Interesting. Connect. So what's the real bank teller here? You need to know my other video to know why that makes sense. What's the real bank teller here? And what's the story Jolene's built on top of that? Long silence. The real thing is, I haven't run a merger integration before. That's a fact, not an insult. The story is that this means I'm going to fail publicly in front of everybody who are quietly waiting for me to fall short. So I asked, well, where do you think does that second part come from? The story. Another pause. The real important piece of info. My first manager years ago, he used to say, you either know your job or you don't belong in the room. I don't think that's true anymore, he said, but I still think that my Jolene, and he had a name for his Jolene, still believes him. So this was David's insight, not mine. I hadn't told him where the story came from. He found it himself once there was space to look. So we move into choose. Given what you now know, what's true and what's left over from your old manager, what would you choose to do differently before this next meeting? So David decided to do two things. He reached out to a colleague who'd led a merger integration before, and purely to ask two specific questions that he genuinely didn't know the answers to. This was a trusted colleague, so he didn't need to prove himself, just to close a real gap. And he changed one piece of internal language from "I don't belong in this room" to "I'm the right person for this and I'm still learning parts of it." Asked his colleague those questions, got great insights, no judgment. A tiny bit of his Jolene did show up, but he came back into his reframe. I am the right person for this and I'm still learning parts of it, and that's okay. So a few weeks later, we check in. The steering committee meetings hadn't become easy, okay? There's no bippity-boppity-boo in my work or my approach or the way most people come out of it. I'm not going to pretend there is. And David was very honest about that. But something had shifted. I still notice my Jolene before I walk in. But now I know what she's actually talking about. She's not telling me I'm a fraud. She's telling me I'm doing something I haven't done before. I have some inaccurate thoughts around that. I'm looking for the accuracy. Okay, that's what I'm dealing with right now. My Jolene is trying to help me. So I want to be honest with you here about something. David didn't do this once and it's finished, okay? He's still practicing it, as most of my clients do, as I do. Jolene is regularly there. And David had to practice it particularly before most steering committee meetings. And that's the Kaizen element of this work. Now, if you don't know what that means, look for my video on my Kaizen mind approach. Partnering with Jolene, or your Jolene, isn't a single conversation that resolves her forever. No, it's a small, repeatable practice. Listen, thank, connect, choose. And you return to it, meeting by meeting, situation by situation, internal conversation by internal conversation. Each time you do it, you do get a little faster at telling the bank teller from the story. You do get a little faster at being able to distinguish what you think is the truth and the accuracy. That's not a failure of the method. That's exactly how sustainable change happens. Small, consistent practice compounding over time. So, where are we? Let's recap. Essentially, I'm saying, don't fight Jolene. Listen, partner. Don't try to silence her. Listen to what she's actually saying. You're Jolene. Thank her for the signal rather than resenting it. Connect with what's real underneath the story, then choose your response deliberately rather than reacting on autopilot. And this is practice. It's not a one-off fix. You'll get better at it the same way that David did, that I do, that many of my clients do, eventually. And that's not because Jolene disappears or is silenced. No, she's trusted a little more. And because you get quicker at recognizing which part of what she says are worth listening to. If anything, you are training Jolene, training her to help you in a genuinely helpful way. She's responding and not reacting. So if this way of working with your own Jolene resonates with you, if you'd like any more support in this practice for yourself, please connect with me. And as always, when I say to you, please look after yourself, and thank you for looking after your growth mindset, and thank you for having a Kaizen mind. See you soon.